Hi Dom, this week's review is the story of Edgar Sawtelle by David Wroblewski, aka number 11 on your list of favorite books. Now since Thursday is going by pretty fast and I don't want to miss my deadline, I'll just hurry through this review, considering the book is this fucking big. So, the story of Edgar Sawtelle is about this boy, Edgar Sawtelle, who is born mute. And he lives with his parents Edgar and Trudy on this dog breeding farm. This farm isn't so much for an official breed of dog, but for something called the Sawtelle dogs. So when Edgar is about 14, his uncle Claude comes to live with them for a couple months. Eventually, Edgar's father and Claude disagree, so Claude leaves the farm and moves to the town nearby. And everything is going fine for a while until Edgar's father mysteriously dies in their barn. Edgar finds him and is the only one around, but because he's mute, he can't use the telephone to call 911, so he has to stand there and watch his father die. Edgar and his mother Trudy are now left alone with all these dogs that they're trying to train and sell to potential buyers. And it's difficult because Edgar's 14 and his mom has pneumonia, so they're pretty much on their own. Sometimes the old veterinarian, Dr. Papineau, comes along, but he's not really that helpful. And this is a really difficult time for Edgar because not only is his dad dead, but his mom has pneumonia and he can't be around her for fear of getting pneumonia. So the only one he can turn to is his oldest dog friend, Almondine. And he and Almondine have had this special bond since he was born. Like, she's always been looking out for him. They were the best of friends, and they have this special connection. And so eventually, because they need help with raising the dogs and training them and breeding them, they bring in Claude. And after a while, it becomes clear that there's this romantic relationship occurring between Claude, Edgar's father's brother, and Trudy, Edgar's mother. Also, Edgar begins to suspect that his uncle Claude may have had something to do with his father's death. He finds a syringe in the barn, but he can't really place it, and he's afraid that people will think he's crazy if he says that his uncle killed his father. Hamlet! Sorry, what was that, Dom? I didn't catch that. Oh, me? Oh, I didn't say anything, Alex. Go ahead, continue. Oh, okay. Edgar decides he needs to confront Claude in some way and see what his reaction to the accusation would be, and then go from there. Once Edgar sees Claude's reaction, one of horror and disgust, he realizes that Claude did murder Edgar's father. After mistakenly killing Dr. Papineau, thinking that it's Claude, Edgar has to run away with his dogs, and he leaves for several weeks. Hamlet! You trying to say something, Dom? Because if you are, I don't want to hear it. I'm just gonna keep on ignoring you from now on. And eventually Edgar decides that he has to go home to take revenge for his father's death. Oh, something I should have mentioned a while back is that Edgar is very special. Not only is he mute, but he also from time to time sees ghosts. He sees not only his father's ghost telling him that he was murdered, but he also sees a ghost of an old farmer. And so to make a very, very long story only slightly shorter, Edgar and Claude get trapped inside the barn while it burns. Edgar is trying to save the litter information and the breeding records that are so important to the Sawtelle dog bloodline, and Claude is trying to kill Edgar so that nobody will know that Claude killed his brother. Meanwhile, outside the burning building, the dogs are free, and Trudy is being slowly suffocated by Dr. Papineau's son, who is just confused and worried about what happened to his father, and going slightly insane from alcohol and this chemical that ended up being poured on him somewhere during the barn. Don't ask. And finally, in the end, the dogs are set free into the wild because Edgar, Trudy, and Claude all die. Edgar from being poisoned, Trudy from being suffocated, and Claude from smoke inhalation. Wait a second. Edgar's father, Claude, Dr. Papineau, Trudy, and Edgar all die. This must be based on a Shakespeare play. Hello, I was saying that from the very beginning. You know what, Dom? Just because you're an English major doesn't mean that you know everything about English, okay? Pretty sure I figured out it was Hamlet way before you figured out it was Hamlet. I'm 10 times more awesome than you. You know what, Alex? Just because I wear a lot of hats doesn't make me any less of a person, okay? And those words hurt me. Well, anyways, despite this book being based on a Shakespeare play that isn't exactly my favorite, I still really like the book. It's very different from the original Hamlet. For one thing, it's set in the 1970s in Wisconsin. And for another, the main character is mute, which might be an improvement? I know I'm gonna get in some trouble for that one from Dom. For another thing, dogs are a major part of this book. And in my opinion, it's because dogs are known for their loyalty, especially the Sawtelle dogs. There's lots of letters in the book from people who have owned Sawtelle dogs who tell them stories about how their dog saved their life in some life-threatening situation. I mean, I don't really remember Hamlet all that well, but I think one of the major issues that is driving Hamlet is whether he should be loyal to his father. And that comes across in the story of Edgar Sawtelle. He's constantly torn between being loyal to his father, being loyal to his mother, or just being loyal to himself. What I liked about the book were the characters. There's Edgar, Trudy, Claude, Henry, and sometimes even a viewpoint from the dogs. Even though I sometimes don't agree with their decisions, I still can understand how they arrived at that point, such as Trudy's decision to start sleeping with Claude, which I never really understood in the original Hamlet. Is it a bad decision? Absolutely. Is it going to emotionally scar her son forever? Most likely. Does the author make this choice believable? Fuck yeah. I think that's what I really, really loved about this book. It may be massive, but it goes the extra step to make characters' decisions credible and explain what their motivation is. And while it is the role of the English student to discover that for themselves in Shakespeare's play, in this book it's kind of laid out for you, which I prefer. Also, there's considerably fewer soliloquies, so that's good. One thing that bothered me, though, is that you can see characters translated from Shakespeare's Hamlet to the story of Edgar Sawtelle. Edgar Sawtelle is Hamlet, his parents, Gertrude and Hamlet, his uncle Claudius is Uncle Claude. And then there's Almondine, the dog, who is Ophelia? Now, I understand that the reasoning is that Ophelia and Hamlet are companions. They're loyal companions until they're broken up. But making the female love interest a dog? You know, it's said that Sawtelle dogs are, even greater than humans themselves, so maybe it's not a bad thing. That's just one thing that I had a problem with. But other than that, I really liked this book. I was actually surprised at how much I liked it. I guess I'll give it 4 charmingly inaccurate stories about how Edgar's parents met out of 5. Dom, I look forward to your next review, which is of Little Women, which I think I've read. And remember, if all the main characters aren't dead or brutally maimed by the end of the story, it's not a Shakespeare play. I can't believe you said Hamlet would be better if he was mute. What the hell? Oh god, you're not gonna go into another speech about how great Hamlet is, are you? Hamlet is so awesome that whenever stage production— you are. Just kidding, Dom. You know I appreciate your love for Hamlet. You know what, Alex? Just because I wear a lot of hats doesn't mean I'm racist, okay? You know what, Alex? Just because I'm wearing a different hat in every one of your videos that I appear in doesn't mean I'm a person who has a lot of hats. You know what, Alex? Just because I'm a person who has a lot of hats doesn't mean I don't look damn awesome in them, okay? Double negatives.